Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I'm excited today to talk to Beverly Flynn. We just met. We have not met before. Obviously, I interview a lot of people that are friends of mine or people that I've known before. And her and her family have amassed, in a relatively short period of time, coming up here in the next week or so, over 400 units, rental units. So pretty amazing. And we're going to learn about her story today. So Beverly, great to see you. Glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. This is an amazing story. There's always like people, and I know you say you don't use social media very much and you don't love it. And the truth is a lot of people that do use it a lot also hate it, but they just keep getting sucked back in. And so, you're one of those folks that you meet every once in a while that's kind of crushing it, has done some amazing things, but nobody really knows your story. This is your first podcast and not that active on social media. And so excited to kind of share your story with other people. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great lessons learned here.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, I know you were a NASA contractor before you started, and I talk a lot about, my wife and I came out of corporate America, and we have, very much corporate backgrounds before we started in '08. And I used to think like, hey, we have all this education and all these things that we don't even need now, or we didn't need. And I kind of poo-pooed that background. But the reality is as time kind of went by, I was like, okay, well, there's a lot of benefits that we got from that world that we left behind that we're applying into our business. It wasn't necessarily as evident, I guess, kind of early on, but as time goes by, it's like, okay, well, we're very detail oriented, or at least certainly my wife is. Like we probably think bigger because we work for huge companies and things like that. And so there's definitely some benefits. But tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got here, because it's a unique story for sure.
So yeah, I did work for a NASA contractor in their contracts department for about 20 years out of the Kennedy Space Center. And I, like you're saying, this is stuff that you bring with you out of that world into the world of real estate. Definitely detail oriented, because in contracts, every T's got to be crossed, every I's got to be dotted, everything has to be compliance driven. And so I think that just helped me to be extremely organized and being able to, multitask a lot of different things. And I was also involved in, negotiating with subcontractors and stuff like that, which I think has truly helped me in negotiating buying properties.
Yeah.
Then how we ended up in West Virginia, some of our kids went to college up here, and then an opening came for a soccer coach, and my husband had been coaching for a number of years, and we thought, he could just go up there for a few months, coach soccer, come back down to Florida, because I had a really good job. I was a manager of the contracts department, and I made good money, and we had health benefits and all of that kind of stuff. And he took the job, and then it turned out to be that he needed to be up here in West Virginia full time. So I took a step down in my department. They allowed me to work from home, and I continued working up here. We had initially started looking for a property for our kids. We had 3 kids in the same college, and they were paying like $8,000 a month for room and board, and this was like 15 years ago. And that's a lot of money. 3 kids, that's, it's $25,000. So we said, well, can we find maybe a duplex? They rent out one side, live in the other side, and then it'll be a lot cheaper for them to live. And that led to buying 3 duplexes. And we moved up here, and then it just led to wanting to get more properties as they came available. And so we just slowly kept building our portfolio for a while, but I was working full time, so I couldn't keep managing it. And then finally, 2019, right before COVID, we bought a bunch of properties, and all of a sudden we went from like 65 units to over 200. And there was no way to keep working full time and trying to manage that stuff. And so then we made the leap of faith and said, okay, we're going, full time, managing the properties and keep buying. And it's, Here we sit today, 5 years later, so well, I guess almost 6 years later, and it's worked out really well.
Yeah. So help me understand the vision, because I know you kind of like maybe stumbled into it. You just shared there. And then the vision has probably changed over time, right? You like said, well, maybe we could do this. And then you did that. And you're like, okay, well, what's next, right? So help me understand kind of over time how that vision has grown, and maybe a little bit more about what is the vision today. I mean, I know you said you've got 320, you're about to close on another 120 doors. So that'll take you up to 440. But what's the vision? Is it to have thousands of properties? Is it to move out to other states, or is it to like, hey, we're going to get to once we get this acquisition done, we're stopping, or it's hard for entrepreneurs to ever stop anything. But what is the vision, or kind of how has it evolved, and where is it now?
Well, we always wanted to get into owning rental properties, but in Florida, real estate was just very expensive. When
Right.
we moved up here to West Virginia, when we first got up here in 2011, properties were a lot cheaper. I wish I knew then what I know now, because I think we
Sure.
probably would have an even bigger portfolio. But everything you do, you learn. There's a reason behind everything. You have to
Right.
go through you have to take your punches and learn from each one and grow from there. So it's just been our goal to buy anything we could, any good deal, any deal that makes sense. Which prior to COVID was pretty easy. A lot of deals made sense. Interest rates were lower, and it was easier to buy properties. Then COVID came along, and interest rates went up, prices went up, which should have been the opposite effect. um, but it's been a little bit harder to find deals. So that's what we've evolved. Why we're this one that we're getting ready to close on. It's a hotel that we're going to convert to apartments.
Okay.
The structures there, I mean, to build is very expensive these days. So here's a building that's already in place that has 120 units in it. And, we just have to put some small kitchens in them and, create still keep it like a kind of a hotel kind of like environment, but it's apartments. Some
Hmm.
furnished, some unfurnished, offer them, some amenities like you'd get. And so that's our vision now is if this works, we still want to keep building our base of properties. We're not going to stop doing that. But if this works, then it's something we want to replicate and take to other areas.
Yeah. I know you said you have like quite a few duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. And so are
Mhm.
you like you get when you have that many that fast, I'm sure there's lots of ways, but are you advertising direct to sellers and buying from them? Are you buying, how do you target, I guess what are the kind of primary ways that you're finding these deals?
Um, for a while there was actually relatively easy. I also at one point I thought I was going to get laid off working from home, and before we had built enough properties to sustain us. And so I got my real estate license because I said, I can do that nights and weekends. And we have sort of a small or maybe a big small town. We have kind of a small town feel, but in a larger town, because like Parkersburg, I think, is the fourth largest city in West Virginia. Um, and then I just, you get your name out there. And because when I became a realtor, finding deals actually became pretty easy, right? Because I would have really quick, easy access to the MLS and what was coming available, and I could search it however often I wanted. I could go see properties without, having to coordinate with a real estate agent or something like that. And
Right.
then my name just kind of got out there with all the realtors that um, I buy. I buy properties and I try to be fair in my deals. I don't try to lowball people, or I don't try to be sneaky, mean, whatever in my deals. I just try to be really upfront about it. If this is what I'm willing to pay, if you like it, great. If you don't, that's fine.
Right.
But if a deal makes sense and it makes money, why bicker back and forth? Or I don't know. People tell me I'm a great negotiator. I just kind of let people negotiate themselves into the deal that I want. So I'm not really sure exactly how I got so good at that, other than I used to negotiate, services type contracts. So
For NASA, yeah,
negotiate.
like multi-billion dollar
Yeah,
contract. So,
yeah.
you know what I
That
found
wasn't my
is
money.
yeah. Well, you know what I've kind of found is that people, there's a lot of people that assume that a good salesperson is like this kind of slick salesperson, right?
Hmm. The
And I
used
think the
car
reality
salesman.
is the best salespeople are those that follow a good process. And it's not
Mhm.
so much about being slick, a salesperson, right? It's just that you know what you want, you know what you can do, and you just kind of follow a process,
Yep.
and that's repeatable, right? Like so, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you bought a lot of stuff really just off the MLS, or maybe even kind of listings that never even hit the market, but
Hmm.
an agent knew to come to you because that's where you're the easy button, I guess, maybe.
A lot of times, yeah, the number of the agents will come to me first because when you put say you have a fourplex or something and you put that on the market, they get a million phone calls and they have to keep showing and you have to coordinate it with the tenants and things like that. If they can bring it to me and I'm give them a fair price that they want, then they don't put it out there. I mean, I'm sure probably people would have an issue. Some people do. They're like, well, how come she got it? And like, well, she offered a fair price, so we took it. That it didn't actually go
Yeah,
out there for competition amongst other people. But listing an investment property. It is not easy. Tenants are difficult. They don't want the owner to sell the property because they think the new owner is going to come in and jack their rent and different or kick them out or something like that. So it's really
right.
kind of hard to coordinate all of that. I mean, I have properties I purchased, I never even went inside. After
Sure.
a while, you get to know the things to look for, and we can basically fix almost anything. I mean, you want to stay away from like huge foundation issues and things like that.
Right, right.
But with rentals, there's a whole lot more leeway on what's a foundation issue versus somebody's personal house, and
For
you know,
sure, yeah.
yeah. Most of the time, you don't give
Yeah,
tenants access to the basement anyways, because all they do is throw a bunch of crap down there.
right. So let's talk a little bit about kind of early on. So you bought stuff off the MLS. You obviously have like a big deal coming here, a hotel deal that you're going to convert. Like, how has kind of acquisitions changed over the years for you? And because now, you're not in a huge town, but I assume acquisitions gets harder, so you got to get more creative, like buying a hotel. Like maybe just talk about how that's evolved and kind of where you think that's going to go from here.
Um, I don't know. We ourselves have kind of struggled with how to move forward because the properties are being put out there at prices that don't necessarily cash flow. And I see other people buying them, and it's like, how are they getting them to cash flow? I've been doing this for years. I know what I'm doing. And if I can't make it cash flow, how can somebody who has, say, a whole lot less units, well, a lot of times they end up losing money on them and whatnot. So I think
Right.
that has definitely been the challenge is that the prices have gone up. And then with the interest rates, I mean, I have some commercial loans that are 3.99%. That's unheard of now.
Right.
And that has a big impact on payments. So the deals you got to turn over a few more rocks to find some better deals. And like I said, a lot of times it's just because people know that I buy property, so sometimes they just bring it to me first. And like I said, if
Yeah.
it's a fair deal, if it cash flows, maybe a little higher price than I want to pay, but so long as it cash flows, then I'll
Yeah.
go after it. Because if I get first dibs, then I'm not fighting with anybody else to run up a price to buy something.
Yeah. Have you done much creative acquisition stuff like sub two type stuff? Because I have a friend that owned a pretty decent sized portfolio, not as big as yours, in West Virginia, actually. And I think he was primarily doing a lot of sub two stuff just because there's a lot of houses that have those, like, 3 to 4% interest rates that are out there. Have you done much of that?
I'm not really quite sure what that means.
Oh, okay. Just like assuming the mortgage,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
previous mortgage, and kind of taking that over, and
Haven't had too much of that yet, but that is definitely something we have been looking at because, I mean, not all loans are assumable.
yeah,
Of course, a number of them are, and I didn't even really realize they were assumable until recently. And so at that point, if you have the cash to make up the difference, then yeah, assuming would be great. Um, the best deals were definitely ones where you could buy and the owners could hold, and the bank would finance and you maybe only had to have 5% skin in the game or something like that.
right.
I've done a lot of creative deals. I actually we just back in October, a guy that we had bought properties from before that I had maintained communications with. He came to me and he said, "Hey, I got like 25, 30 doors more. I want to get out. I'm like 80 something years old and I don't know that I want to keep doing this." And so he said, "I'll sell you. This is the price, and I'll hold 100% of the financing."
Yeah.
And so he's holding 100% of the financing, and we bought all of those doors. I didn't even go look at him. I knew him. I knew he maintained his properties in pretty good condition, and so yeah, we just closed on the deal. And I wish there'd be some more of those deals would come along, because there's not many people will give you 100% financing. But there's definitely still deals to be made out there. You got to look. And luckily for our area, and I think why we kind of haven't branched out too far, is our eviction laws are excellent here. I know if I've heard
Oh,
horror stories, I can get somebody out in 14 days here. If they haven't paid their rent, I get a hearing in 10 days, and the judge kicks them out in 4 days. Just like that. Easy peasy. I mean, if I go across the river to Ohio, I have to wait 30 days before I can file on them, and then it takes longer to get a hearing, and so yeah, that part has been really nice because I've heard a lot
yeah.
of horror stories from other areas
Oh, yeah.
about having to get
Yeah.
people
And
out.
obviously, there's some states that are really bad, like New York, New Jersey. And
Hmm.
yeah. So let's talk about kind of management. So like that's a massive undertaking to be managing, over 300, soon to be over 400 units. So talk about like, I guess some pitfalls along the way. And I generally believe, because I've got a lot of friends that have managed, we have a member now that manages 22,000 doors, but I mean, people that have managed hundreds, there's a huge learning curve, right? And you go from this, like, it's, probably you and your husband doing a ton of work to like, hey, now we can afford to have a whole team and staff that's kind of doing maintenance or other aspects. So maybe share some of the lessons learned in a way to where people listening can benefit from some of the mistakes you probably made.
Uh, I think the biggest mistake we've made in building our staff has been being too nice, and then being more or less taken advantage of. You want to believe everybody has a good heart, and you want to believe that everybody has the same work ethic that you do, and and all of that. But reality is that that's just not true. It's trust but verify. Definitely have to keep a closer eye on people, so that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and not being afraid to actually fire somebody. I mean, we try to subscribe to the adage that if an employee is really benefiting us and has really good work ethic, and they seem to have our company's best interests at heart, we want to keep them happy. We don't want them to go anywhere. We have a property manager, Katie, and I couldn't live without her, so I pay her so that she knows I can't live without her. you know and so I want to keep her happy. I mean, at some point when I want to back out of this, because my husband and I are 54 and 56, and we don't want to keep doing this forever. um, and we want to pass the torch down to our son, who's he's a partner in the company as well. He's gonna need somebody like me, to be able to help him and guide him. He's great with maintenance, but he doesn't like the office aspect. You got to have somebody you can trust, and I think that's always been the hardest part, is trusting, because I've had property managers that have stolen money, stolen rents, things like
Sure.
that. And Katie's, she's been with us for 3 years, and she is my right hand. I definitely couldn't manage all this stuff without her. And then
Yeah.
we have, like I was telling you, my almost son, because we've known him since he was, a little boy, and he's, 34 now. Um, and, people like that, he shows up every single day. He comes in on weekends if need be. I mean, he's just a big part. So we've drawn him into, slowly into partnership as well, and
Yeah.
make sure that he stays happy.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, like the importance of kind of a family affair. So there, by the way, my wife and I only have one child. He's 17 years old, and there's no possible way right now he could work for us. Like he needs to work for somebody else for a while first before, if he ever comes into the family businesses at all. But so anyway, I know it's not for everybody, but just talk about, is that an important thing for you to kind of have your family in? And some people do it obviously just out of necessity. Some do it because it's part of the legacy they want to live. Like, how do you view that?
Well, I mean, the legacy would be nice, but way back when our son Jackie, like I said, he's 33, when we got him into grow, come work with us full time, take the leap, the leap that I had to take back in 2019 to, leave my nice cushy government job and health benefits. Um, take that leap with us and let's grow it. So we always made sure that him and his family were, above all, always taken care of and whatnot. But I think it's very important because, family should be people you can trust, with everything. He has in our LLC, he has the authority to do everything that I do. I trust him that much. He's always been this like really awesome kid. I mean, he's the kid everybody wants to have. He works hard, he shows up, he's calm, he doesn't get it to get him mad. I think I've seen him mad like twice in the last 25 years. So he keeps a level head. He was just really, there was never a question when we wanted, with our five older kids, we wanted somebody to join in with us so that it didn't always just fall on us. It was never a question which one of the kids it was going to be. It was going to be him. Not that you love him any more or less than your other children. It's just he has a knack for it and he has a
Yeah.
great work ethic. And so the beauty of this is that even though we own all those units and everything, we still maintain our lives. I mean, we work probably 40, 45 hours a week. And, most people who own their own business work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. But that's because we have each other backing, we can back each other up. I know if we
Yeah.
go on vacation, he's got everything covered. He goes on vacation, we got everything covered. So we just, we have the privilege of having our own company without the pitfalls of you have to work so much because you're the only one, and then having, like I said, Katie, our property manager who's been with us for a while, I know she's got things covered, and
Yeah.
Christian
That's
as
great.
well. So we have solid people there, that we can trust. I mean, explicitly, they have access to the bank accounts and everything, we trust them that much, and that it's really hard to find people like that, that
Yeah, for sure.
that you would
And I
trust
know you have
everything.
more kids, and not to pry too much, but
Mhm.
are they interested? Are there some that were just completely not interested? There might be some that just don't have the right skill set. I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah.
is there a plan to have more kids involved, or
Yep.
no?
So we have our 17 and 18-year-old who work for us full time. In fact, Josh, who's 17, he didn't want to keep going to school. He hated school, and we said, okay, well, what if you did a homeschool program and you came to work for us full time, and you learn like how to do a trade. You learn how to paint walls and do drywall repairs, and you learn about the business and whatnot. And of course, he was 16 at that point. Oh, you mean I don't have to go to school all day every day? No, but you do got to go to work and we'll pay you. So we pay him. Our 18-year-old is, of course, he's old enough, that he's an adult now. It's always hard when your children cross over into 18 and they went from kid yesterday to adult today. Um, but yeah, so they're both working full time for us. Over Christmas break, when we were down another property manager, and our main property manager Katie took vacation, I brought my 13-year-old daughter in to work in the office, and had her answer phones and write receipts for rents and do all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's just kids need to learn this stuff. They need to learn more than how to play TikToks all day long.
Yeah, yeah, no
And
doubt.
she did really good. I mean, she was friendly. People were very receptive, to a 13-year-old sitting there taking their, writing out their rent receipts, or, answering the phones and stuff like that. I know it really pulled her like out of her comfort zone. She had never done anything like that. But, I mean, kids got to know what we do all day long, and, how hard we work to provide all those privileges that they get.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Any kind of lessons learned, like any big mistakes you made that if you had to do over, I'm sure you made some mistakes along the way, but anything that's worthy of kind of sharing here of kind of guidance you could give people on building a large rental portfolio. Like what are a couple of the things you would do differently if you had to do over again, if there's anything?
Um, I, I feel like we were very fortunate that we didn't really have like a lot of mistakes. I mean, of course, we made some small ones, but nothing really major or earth-shattering. I feel like we've been very fortunate with that. I know for a time period, we went through the issue of having too many people and still not getting the work done because we were, that was on us. We didn't manage our workforce effectively. We didn't require them to say get the job done. We gave them a lot of leeway, too many days off, things like that. So I think that we've definitely learned from that. That you got to manage your people and you got to set expectations, and if they're not meeting them, you have to be willing to let them go. I mean, even if you've been really buddy with them and whatnot, and that hurts, but if they're not benefiting you, if they're costing you money, because we had a property manager that was costing us money.
Yeah.
She was renting to terrible people and receipts were disappearing, and I mean, just different things like that. And it was just tough because my kids had become friends with her kids and all those different kinds of things. And then now all of a sudden you got to let her go, so but we should have probably let her go months before we actually did. So you have to be careful with being too nice. You want to be good
Yeah.
to employees, but you can't be a pushover.
Right. Right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Beverly, appreciate you sharing your story with us today. Really, really impressive, and congratulations. And I
Thank you.
know that you guys have worked really hard to do that because, there's no way you could have done what you've done without a lot of sacrifice and without a lot of hard work. So, appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Definitely. They didn't. And I think one piece of advice if people are doing a family business, because that's basically what we have been is, especially with me, my husband and myself, is you got to both be on the same page,
Oh
because
yeah.
along the way there could have been a lot of pitfalls that could have hurt our relationship, and we've been together 25 years and still going strong, with all of our kids and everything else like that. You really, husband and wife really got to be, and if you have a kid involved as well, you all got to have the same vision, or at least close to the same vision, and have a willingness to listen to each other and work as a team, because
Yeah.
it definitely could have ripped everything apart if we hadn't been so focused on this is what we want to do together versus this is something that he wants to do or she wants to do, or you got to be on the same page. I mean,
Yeah. That's great advice. I work with my wife, so I get it.
hmm
And we haven't always been
so
on the same page, but you know it when you're not, and it feels good when
hmm
you are. So that's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And yeah,
Yeah.
feel very
Beverly, if
very
folks want
fortunate and
to,
blessed.
yeah, if folks wanted to connect with you in any way, what can they do?
Um, I mean, they could call me. We've mentored people throughout the years. I mean, there was a guy that we bought properties from initially that helped us, answer questions even after, the sale. So I've have, no problems mentoring as well, things like that. But I mean, they could email me, call me.
Okay. How about
I just
do you
don't
have a
need a
website that
million.
people can, is there a website that people can visit?
Um, our website for our main business is Gold Star, like one word, Gold Star dash PM for propertymanagement.com. That's our website. And then our new venture, the hotel, which that website's still kind of crude right now because we haven't actually closed, but that's goldstarmicroapartments.com.
Okay. All spelled out, apartments.com.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay. Cool. We'll check it out. So, well, thanks again for spending some time with us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, good. Glad you're here. So everybody, gosh, real estate can change your life, right? And so I think it's just it's important to have a clear vision, and if you're working with your family, to have kind of clear goals and make sure you're all on the same page for sure. So I mean, we do a
Definitely.
lot of these things to build a better life and build legacy and build a better life for our families, right? And so sometimes businesses, not just real estate, can tear those families apart. So you want to make sure that you avoid that. So hope you guys got some good value from today. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.